The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Hey, if it's night at night, it's Citizen Mike. Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. This is the episode for November 2, 2017. On my right, the editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli. Ralph, we got a lot of content for the show.
Okay.
That we got to get to. Included in the content for this episode are 3 videos that I took from the candidate forums that was held recently at Town Hall. Let me just explain that a little bit more and then help me out as I'm sure I'll need it. Excluding the Board of Ed, and I didn't deal with the Board of Ed in these video clips because we had
them on the show.
seven candidates on for the Board of Ed. So on this episode of the Citizen Mike Show, I'm just talking about the mayoral forum and the town council forum. Now, the mayoral forum, which had challenger Jared Liu and Mayor Dickinson being asked questions by 4 people, that took like an hour.
Okay.
I took that hour and I edited it down to about 7 to 8 minutes.
Right.
Okay? Severely edited. And I just had to, use my judgment as to what would be useful for the viewers. The council forums were divided into 2 panels. One group of counselors and then another, and each of those panels, each of the council forums was an hour. So there were 2 panels of counselors, each an hour, and I took about an hour and brought it down to almost 4 minutes for the first panel and about the same for the second panel. So my goal was not to do a deep, thorough dive into the complexities of each candidate's views. Couldn't do it. Watch the full forum on government TV.
Yes.
If that's, if you need to do that, and I would encourage that. I would encourage that because it's pretty interesting. By limiting the time on the council forum to about 4 minutes each, maybe my goal was so the viewers could match a name and a face, get to know a bit their public persona, get a taste, just a taste, of their views on various subjects, and that's probably all I could accomplish. Now, one more disclaimer that I got to get in, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on this. Sometimes candidates were the victim of bad questions, meaning if these candidates didn't shine with real substantive, sharp answers, or they were talking about topics that weren't all that relevant to some viewers, that means they weren't asked a question that would elicit that kind of answer. And so I didn't want to penalize candidates if they got bad luck on the questions. And 2 come to mind, Vinnie Cervoni and Tom Laffin.
Absolutely.
So what I did is I took parts of their closing argument and I put it into the video clip because I didn't like a particular, I felt unsatisfied with some of the questions they got. And that's how I did it. Your thoughts?
Just a few quick ones.
Yeah.
One, please watch it on government TV.
Absolutely.
But I think it's already on YouTube.
Yeah.
2, and it's because it happened to come onto my YouTube homepage. Second of all, I think you did get a flavor of what I learned something from these clips. I work at the newspaper, I read a lot of articles, and I still learn some things with these clips. So I think that's it. I'll point out that at the Record Journal, we also gave each candidate about 500 to 600 words to make their plea. If you go to our website under opinion, you'll find some and some more where the candidates get an opportunity to share their views.
Yeah,
So,
good point, and good job by the Record Journal to try to get those out. Now, I got about 60 seconds worth of editorial comments before we tee up that video number one.
Okay.
These are council candidates, and very often they're asked about questions over which they have no authority or no power. They're very often asked about topics that is not within their portfolio. So as our dear viewer, as you watch these videos, keep that in mind. Let me give you some examples, and we're going to develop this later on the show. A lot of time was spent on the topic of economic development, and I want to get to that in between clips, but the council has precious little to do with economic development, even though they spent a lot of time on it. For example, education. Many were asked education questions, but it's the Board of Education and the superintendent that deal with the nuances, and spending priorities for education. And the mayor kind of sets out his budget, and that's pretty much bulletproof. And the council really can't get involved too much in education policy or money. Policing is another example. That's an executive branch decision. The council, if they wanted, could add more money to the police budget, but it doesn't mean the police department is going to hire more police officers. And in fact, in recent years, the police department has had large sums left over. So that's an example of the limited impact that councilors can have over executive branch departments. So one of the comments that I hope to have time to make as we get into the show is the format of these forums. Are the hard questions asked? Can they be asked? And I'm beginning to think that I'm going to call it a go soft format, is necessary when it comes to counselors, because so much is outside of their authority. So many issues are issues that they cannot control. Bruce, let's get that first video up. Let's hit it. 3, 2, 1, go.
I blame Governor Malloy entirely. He inherited a lot of this, so I don't blame him for the situation he's faced. I don't always agree with some of his decisions since he's been in office, but I think that this problem's not going to go away. And so I just think that we have an awful lot of talk in this room about how to spend money. And it just seems like, feel like there's episodes of Star Trek where there's an alternate reality, and I feel like there's a reality where the state is doing great, and the money's flowing in, and everyone agrees, and some people are in that reality, and the rest of us are in the real world, where this is going to happen year after year. It's going to be like Groundhog Day. So,
and to answer number 2 about the railroad station, I think what we could do to get that brightened up a little bit is get some famous bands here during summertime. And with the senior center, what I like to do is split it in half, get the adolescents in there to mingle with them, play pool, get a hot meal, a lot of more interaction than what's going on these days. I'll say that I am pro towards education, and there's been some town council meetings that I've been to this summer and late spring where I've advocated strongly and concerned about the $20 million that we were supposed to get in September, and because the budget crisis and didn't pass, we're getting less money.
We have an additional, again, arguably $6-7 million that's truly extra reserve fund. If you wanted to call it a rainy day fund. I don't bicker too much with the amount of that. My issue with the reserve fund is that we add to it on a regular basis, which is more indicative of a budgeting disagreement I have with the administration. So basically what we're doing is we're building up our rainy day fund by overtaxing. And the only way you can fight that is to be stricter in the preparation of each department's budget. And if that necessitates an across the board, okay, this year, knock off 3%, this year knock off 5%. Find out how to do it. Leave it to the professionals in each department to determine where it's going to come from. Let them decide whether they need those items. But we need to put more strict guidelines in the budgeting process, and that's an administrative function.
Is there a point where we say no to wage increases and go to arbitration? So arbitration, it becomes a costly endeavor, right? Because you're going to drop 40 to 50,000 into arbitration. Is the arbitration panel fair? Is it a fair system? To me, to the municipalities, is not. There's only $6 or $7 million in there that's really unassigned that you could spend in the future. So do I think we should continue down that path? No, I would like to see us reduce the fund, at least $6 or $7 million. I think what you're going to start seeing in the future is more outsourcing of functions that the towns do now. I think that's really going to be the only alternative. And that, at some point, may help to control costs. But I think you're going to have to look at certain things like, and this is not meant to be predictive, but I mean certain things like the parks, maintenance of parks, grass cutting and things like that, that could be easily outsourced.
Where do you see within the town's budget any potential for savings, whether it's combined services or elimination of services?
Definitely consolidation of services is one way to go. If you've got people that are working as part of the Public Works Department taking care of fields, and you've got the same type of care going on with the Board of Ed, you can take a look at those combination of services there, and you can consolidate some costs. I could look back to prior to the past couple of years when Chairman Cervoni took on the mantle of fundraising the fireworks. I did that for a number of years, but I didn't do it by myself. I did it with a small group of people that were engaged to help out, and I was able to do that on the backs of all the people that wanted to contribute to it.
I've heard everything from splash pads to reducing the size of the pool, additional parking, concessions, as well as recreational facilities. Well, I'm not going to rule that out, but I'm not going to say I'm for it yet because I don't know the dollars and I don't know the plan. I am moved by the words of our 35th president, who said, "Let us not seek the Republican answer, nor the Democratic answer, but the right answer."
But the right answer is how we went on to say that. I saw you reaching for your popcorn and soda.
Yes. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it a fourth time.
We got another one almost like it coming up. I wanted to make some editorial comments on the issue of economic development, which is a continuing theme and thread in these videos and in the candidates' statements. Wallingford Town Council has precious little control or influence over so-called supposed economic development. And economic development, I'm not even sure what that is. To some people, it represents growth in the grand list. To some people, it's the equivalent of redevelopment. And but the town council can do almost nothing about it. First of all, it cannot fight market forces and create a demand for properties or new buildings when the market isn't there for it. So they can talk about it, but they can do precious little. And in fact, there's almost nothing in their portfolio which they can vote on. The PUC has more control with rates. The Economic Development Commission is advisory, but they have a bully pulpit. Certainly the Planning and Zoning Commission can do things with zoning. The Zoning Board of Appeals can grant variances and make the town user-friendly. And of course the mayor, with all his departments, can do whatever he can in running the department. But I just think the issue of economic development is overrated when it comes to council candidates. Your thoughts, and then we'll go to the next tape.
Okay, on economic development.
Yeah.
I think, and I've pointed out on the show more than once, I agree that the council role is limited, but one way it can work is as it works in Southington, which has a town manager, town council form of government. And I can't do the approach complete justice quickly, but what it involves is the administration, the legislative branch, and there is an economic development point person working in concert on things like passing tax incentives for factories that are converted into breweries or distilleries, just an example. It involves identifying properties that the municipality purchases, cleans up, and then turns over to a developer, and the council has to have some role in that. And those are just two things. So in Southington, it clearly works better because you have all branches of government working together. And I think that could happen in Wallingford. But the other point I wanted to make, just an editorial comment on just what we saw, which is I think Vin Testa, in his remarks about what the town needs is stricter preparation of each department budget. That's something that I would be looking for in a council candidate.
Well, then he went on to say, but it's an administrative function.
Okay.
Now, what did he mean by that?
Well, that's true. I think that you are very dependent, and you've served on the council, so you'll maybe be able to add to this. But certainly on the council, you're dependent on the mayor to come forward with information, proposals, et cetera. But what you could do on the council is, Vin Testa couldn't do it alone, but if the mayor doesn't change the way he prepares his budget, you could certainly cut the budget 2% across the board in some protest and saying, listen, you end up with this extra money every year anyway, we're just going to cut it until there's a stricter preparation of the budget.
Let's go to the second video. Bruce, let's tee that up. 3, 2, 1, hit it.
And our excess money to improve our town and improve our people's quality of life. That money from our public accounts in excess of what we need to maintain our AAA bond rating, and something for a surplus for a contingency fund, we should spend it.
What do you think is Wallingford's greatest economic need, and how would you address this as a town council member?
That's a great one. Our greatest economic need is a vision. And someone, a planner, that actually has experience selling municipalities. So we need someone to direct our economic development at the direction of the council, of course. We need a professional who does this for a living, who sells municipalities, who shows us how to make it more business-friendly and corporate-friendly.
Public Works was overestimated. I think we overestimated by about $400,000. Board of Ed, we overestimated by about $800,000. Now, those departments were still able to function. They functioned on a lot less. So those, I think, are some areas that we can look at to cut. And I'm not sure that it's a good idea to hold any money in reserves. The state is in very tough financial condition. And one of the things that they are looking at, in fact, in a report from the governor back in August, he made specific mention of towns' reserve funds. So they're looking at our reserve fund. And they've already concluded that our reserve fund is very high. 2 years from now, when the next budget comes up at the state level, if we're still sitting on $29 million, then that's our own fault.
Audrey, would you please ask the next question of Gina Morgenstein?
Good evening.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi. What do you love about Wallingford?
Wallingford really brings everything for everyone. You can walk, you can bike. It's a wonderful town, and what a great question. So the fact is that we are a town that is struggling a bit due to taxation and the state. Rather than repairing 7 or 8 roads a year, you're never going to come back around and get all those roads done. We should not be priding ourselves on doing all the work ourselves. We're doing it in a manner that is just keeping us by, but we're spending more in the long run. We're spending on temporary fixes, we're spending on improper fixes, we're exploring alternative energy, like a lot of things in this town should at the very least be looked at.
So the first step that we need to do is come up with a long-term plan to grow the area around the transit district. And then the second thing we need to do is to work with our neighboring towns to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. If Merredin's doing one thing that looks good for Merredin, then let Merredin do that and we do something else. We shouldn't try to pretend to be New Haven, but maybe we can attract people who work at Yale to take their train into New Haven, people like that. I'd like to see something like Park and Rec become a little bit more user-friendly.
Hi, Matt. Do you have any objections to the charter changes proposed by the Charter Revision Commission, and do you plan to vote yes to approve them?
I will definitely vote yes. So I'll start right off with that. This time they went for subtle changes, and I believe all of those changes were needed. They're good changes. They're good changes. And it's not going to change Wallingford's government the way it's been projected. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. But we do have reserves, and with those reserves, we don't overspend. I think we manage our money well.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Larson.
What kind of image would you like Wallingford to portray?
That's a great question. And it's a timely question because, you know, we're at a position where we're marketing our town competitively to the business community. I'd like to portray Wallingford as a friendly place, as a welcoming place. I am honored that I've been able to work with our council as their chairman for the past 2 terms. It's been a great group. It's been a great time. Our businesses in town are terrific supporters of everything that goes on here. I've had the opportunity to meet with them through the Economic Development Commission to continue to make sure that they have what they need here in Wallingford. I've also had the opportunity to work with them the past few years to make sure that Wallingford has fireworks for its Independence Day celebration.
I have been adverse to every tax increase since I've been on the council. Can I agree with the statement that the town of Wallingford overtaxes its residents? Yeah, I suppose. But I don't think that anybody intentionally overtaxes the citizens of Wallingford.
What do I love about Wallingford? What I love about Wallingford, and I've been here my entire life, is our potential. It's not what we've done, and it's not what we're going to do tomorrow, but it's what we're capable of doing. It's how we've reached to touch that potential. And no, we haven't met it yet, and we're not going to tomorrow, and I hope we don't tomorrow, and I hope we don't meet our potential in the next 2 years. Because I want our potential to always be out of reach. I want to be the town that when the state is in dire situations to come to and be like, oh, we're going to take all their money. Or we're going to take all their cheese, like a couple years ago. Stay patient. We need to trust.
So there you go. That's the last of our council videos. Ralph, to respond to the comment you made in between the 2 videos about economic development. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. The council has the authority to buy properties. Right. And it has the authority to pass tax abatement programs. Right. And this council has passed a tax abatement.
Absolutely. I agree.
I believe, however, that tax abatement plan was like 6 months to a year late. You didn't see anyone on the council pounding the table about that. And just my editorial comment, it seemed like the council wasn't an active player in devising this. Right. It was sort of like a rubber stamp. Economic Development Commission recommended it. Of course, we'll say okay. So it wasn't a critical, analytical look at it. On the issue of selecting and buying properties for, I guess you'd say, redevelopment rather than grand list growth in the downtown area, that councils over the years have had opportunities to control the entire block of land near the old train station and passed on it. Right. It's done in secret. There's no public debate. You never know what's happening, but it happened. And that's why I made the comments that I did. Let's move on to the mayoral forum,
Okay.
make sure we don't cut that short.
Absolutely.
We got a video on that. Let's tee that up. It's video number 3, Bruce. Let's get to that. 3, 2, 1. Hit it.
What changes, if any, would you make to the way the town handles economic development?
The most important thing we can do is plan for what we want in the downtown. We need to include more voices.
What is your stance on having higher security or officers in schools around Wallingford?
If we have sufficient cause with incidents of a nature and a frequency that would require police officers to be present, certainly I believe the police department would seriously consider, but the point we have to dedicate them just to the schools. We have a serious problem that I don't believe we have at this time.
Actually, won't disagree much with the mayor on that. I think that's spot on.
In the past, some people have criticized the town's budgeting practices by saying expenditures are overestimated and revenues are underestimated. Can you just, I guess, do you think the town needs to make any changes to the way it budgets to improve its budgeting practices going forward?
Well, you asked me to accept your premise that
well, I guess
there's
just
a problem.
Defend the way the town budgets every year.
Which I do not accept that premise. There's a problem. I think if we look at other layers of government, other communities, we don't suffer from some of the problems on a financial level that they suffer from. You will never have zeros, balance out at zeros. You will either have deficits or you'll have money left over. I think most people, and there are people in such dire straits that they cannot plan beyond the next day. But if you have the luxury of being able to plan, you really need to put money aside. And whether it's a replacement of a stove or put a roof on or buying another car, you need to put money aside for those things.
But at the point where for 34 years you have increased the surplus because every year you have underestimated expenses and you've overestimated income, there's a problem there.
Would you support more or less spending of the budget to go to education?
I think STEM education is a very important one where, if I can tell you from the conversations that I've had with the Board of Education and the superintendent, they are savvy to it and they are ready with those plans.
Well, affordability has to be part of an equation. We may not be able to afford everything we would like, but we certainly want to provide a very good education.
What do you think is Wallingford's biggest economic issue and how would you address it?
Our biggest economic issue, I believe, is the vulnerability we have on relying upon state money. The second issue is the state of the economy in general in Connecticut.
I think the answer to your question, I think it's attracting, retaining the businesses that we desire.
What specific measures would you propose to make Community Pool profitable again?
So get the pool passes online, let people pay by credit card, let them upload their own pictures. Now let's think about generating revenue. We can start selling advertisements. Let's get back to generating concessions. Let's make day passes available. We haven't invested anything at this point. We've just done the little tweaks that allow people to take advantage of what they love.
The pool costs in the vicinity of $140,000 operating expense every year. We haven't turned our back on Community Pool, but I don't believe the pool was ever a revenue maker to the extent that it paid for the cost of providing the facility.
What is the importance of supporting transportation changes in our town regarding our railroad?
That train station is not only a gift for us financially, but in terms of incentivizing development around that train station, we should be going after the developers who we want down there.
In fact, our Planning and Zoning Commission adopted the Housing Incentive Zone at least a year or more ago. The Davenport business has moved out, and there is an approved multifamily housing complex being planned for that. In addition, Planning and zoning is dealing with the transportation-oriented development issue, which will provide a portion of the downtown to encourage pedestrian and other use oriented to the railroad station. So a lot is being done. And
Jared, what ways can the town reduce expenses, whether it's consolidating services or eliminating services?
The school board has gone to the mayor for years looking for efficiency of services. For example, they maintain their own fleet of cars. The town could be doing that at reduced expense, at efficiency of staffing. They've also been going to the town for years simply to try to get toilet paper bought as a consortium of towns, right? It's like going to Costco. If you buy in bulk, you're going to save money. Well, we could be partnering with other area towns to simply buy our toilet paper. We would save a tremendous amount of money.
so regionalization often does not get you to a lower number of people you are paying to provide the service, and that is where the vast lion's share of the cost is.
What is specifically being done to market the Bristol-Myers Squibb property?
Well, our economic development coordinator specialist, Mr. Ryan, is very active in dealing with brokers, in making sure that the information is internationally available regarding the site and its prime location.
Let's find an exit strategy for them, right? We might not find a buyer. One of the things that I've been looking at is Little League. I've had some really interesting conversations with the Little League, who has said that they end up driving back and forth from the east side of town to the west side of town because there aren't the fields on the east side. There could be an answer there.
What is the best way to keep in touch with citizens?
People. Let's look at email. Let's look at setting up forms online where people can report potholes or sidewalks that are cracking in their neighborhood. Let's look at offering weekend hours and maybe trading those off with staff not working on pick a day in the morning.
Anything's possible, it's just a question of how much you want to pay for it. Because I can tell you there won't be one unionized employee who will want to change any hours, especially if it's evenings or weekends.
Mayor Dickinson, I'm curious to get your thoughts about, and your opponent's thoughts about the proposed town charter changes.
Here's again a group of volunteers who put their names and their time out there to provide significant work for the community. They stayed away from controversial issues. It was more of a house cleaning, technical review. So they should be proud of the work product. And I think it is a very viable document with those changes.
I think in order for government to be transparent, one of the things they should have done with the vote is they should have separated out the questions. As chief executive of town, my role as the mayor would be to follow the law as it is passed, and that's exactly what I would do.
Did I have to wake you up? I mean,
No.
Are you sure?
I was awake.
You were on the edge of your okay. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought, to me, the most telling,
Yeah.
to me, the most telling response is when Mayor Dickinson is simply asked about the whole notion of overestimating expenses. Did I get that right? Overestimating revenue, overestimating expenses, underestimating revenue, which the numbers bear out. It's not like the question is not based in fact. It absolutely is grounded in fact. So he's asked about that and then asked, is there ways to improve? No one ever says problem. The mayor immediately pivots to, you're asking me to assume there's a problem. No one was asking him to assume there's a problem. It was just being asked a very basic question that we all ask in the workplace every day, that you and I ask each other on the show. Is there a way to improve? He immediately gets as the mayor gets, which is he's too sensitive. He's too dug in. And I am just tired of a town where you can't ask the mayor about the budget. You can't ask the mayor about technology. You can't ask the mayor about the way he funds the pension. You can't ask the mayor about regionalization. You can't ask the mayor about other things. And we had Tom Laffin on this show. I thought the most important interview we did all year was Tom Laffin saying to us, and kudos to Tom Laffin for transparency, saying, listen, there's issues you just don't go with this. There are things you just don't bring up with this mayor. And I'll add another one about the thing you can't even bring up with Mayor Dickinson. You cannot even bring up expanding the PUC from 3 to 5. And I'm tired of a town where it's like having, you know, this older relative, with all due respect to the mayor, and maybe that you just can't ask about anything because he freaks out anytime you ask him about it. And I just wanted to make that point.
You know, going into this episode of the Citizen Mike Show, I thought you were going to have to calm me down.
Okay.
But I'm going to have to calm you down.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Right, okay.
I love, but I want to address what
Yeah,
you said.
address it, and
I want to address what you
please,
said because
defend the mayor if there's a place where I've overstated.
And I'm going to pivot a little bit to something that maybe that you're not expecting, and that is the format of the mayoral forum. You said, and you can't ask them about the PUC. You can't ask them about budgeting, and you can't ask them about some other things. Wait. This is an hour forum.
Right.
He can't escape.
Right.
This is an hour forum. This is the perfect place to ask the question, and then ask the follow-up, and then ask the follow-up, and don't let him wiggle out. The same with Jared Lew, because, you know, he had some non-answers to questions too.
Right.
So I'm sort of addressing what you're saying, but in a different way. When you have that 1 hour, you know, every 2 years with the mayor to ask the difficult questions, you got to ask those difficult questions. And the question I'm raising now is the format. The format of 4 people asking questions with apparently no opportunity to coordinate. If we are semi-serious about these forums,
right?
Semi-serious, and it's a culture we have, it's a tradition we have to do it in this format, and any change breaks the culture. And if keeping that culture is very important because we don't like change, then your questions will go unanswered forever because of the format.
Right.
If we are serious about it, we will change the format. And this is a difficult comment to make, but I think it needs to be said.
Right.
When it comes to the mayoral forum, I don't think the 2 students, having them there, asking the questions that they're asking, are in the public's interest. Maybe they're okay for the council, but in a situation where you have the chief executive running for the town and there is a need not to get off topic, but to press for answers,
right.
I think the 2 reporters have got to coordinate and get a topic and make sure they drill down and squeeze answers out. I think the job is that important. That's pretty controversial, what I said. I want to hear from you.
Well, I think you make some good points, and I don't want to, but when I'm saying you can't ask,
yeah,
I wish I was just talking about this forum.
Right.
What I'm saying is that there are counselors, and maybe that's what I'm trying to get to here, who don't like to ask the mayor about these things. And when they ask him about it, we've shown clips on this show where they practically apologize for asking him questions. So I'm getting to the legislative body too, and how they treat the mayor. Does that make sense?
Well, it kind of, but we forget that the town council is a partisan body.
Right.
And so you're not going to have loyal, faithful, dutiful Republicans challenging the mayor. That's the role of the press.
Okay.
And we see in the state level, on the national level, the partisans provide cover. They provide air cover, you know, for their leaders. So, for example, you said you can't ask the mayor about, you know, budgeting reserves. Maybe the follow-up question, if there's some coordination, well, Mayor, are you saying the growth of reserves was intentional? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Give me yes or no. Well, then he tries to pivot. No, wait, Mayor, let's go back. Are you saying this was an intentional buildup of all these funds, and the budgeting errors were part of a strategy you had to build? Ask those questions, but the format we have, they will never be asked because the candidates know they filibuster for 2 minutes, they pivot, and it never comes back because the questioners have their questions, they're segmented, they're in silos, and they don't feed to a answer to a deep question, to a complex. I didn't say that very well.
No, you did.
Help me out with that. What did I try to say?
I think it's good that we're discussing this,
Yeah.
and it's there's different layers to it.
Yeah.
And I guess I think your point about the role of the press is a good one. And just quickly though, I want to make sure I clarify this, because this is the show before the election, and people are deciding how they're voting, including yours truly. And I want to point out that there are some counselors that I think are helping on some of these issues. I think Vin Testa, I think Jason Zandri, I think that Craig Fishbein, I also think that Joe Marone and Chris Shortell have been wonderful new voices on the council. So I do want to make clear that there are counselors that have raised issues about how, for example, how the mayor budgets. They've also raised issues about technology. So I guess I just wanted to make that point, that there are counselors that are willing to raise these issues with the mayor. Unfortunately, you kind of need a lot of votes on the Wallingford Council to get anything done. So I just wanted to make that point.
So I have another topic to raise with you on the issue
Yeah.
of the mayoral forum. I'm going to suggest two propositions and get your reaction.
Go ahead.
Could it be that Jared Lew came across as very aspirational, not terribly specific, but very aspirational, somewhat of an idealistic a dreamer, but maybe that's what's needed for a change agent, whereas, and this is the second part of it, the mayor may have come across as too negative, seeing obstacles, seeing complexities and nuances because he's burdened by experience and he's been beat up over the years. Let me stop there and get your reaction to that.
Well, I think that Jared Lew, the point that I really locked in on that he's making is this, and I agree with this, despite my earlier comments. Jared Lew said, listen, the mayor has been a mostly good steward of this town for a lot of years. And I don't think there's anybody that doesn't appreciate that. But he is extremely worried about planning for the future and adjusting for the future. And that's very broad, and maybe Jared needs to give more specifics. But I think with that, he's at least, he's hit on something with me both factually and emotionally that I liked.
So a couple of examples, I think, if I can, maybe they weren't in the clips, but they were in the broader forum. I think one of the suggestions Jared Lew had was, again, aspirational. We'll have town hall stay open on a weekend
Great
day.
idea.
Hold on.
Good.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Don't.
Sorry.
I'm not done yet. A citizen might giveth with one hand and
Right,
taketh
right,
away
right,
with
right,
the other.
right.
All right. Or he said like an evening. You know, have town hall open for an evening. Very aspirational, and the question I raised, well, maybe that's a little naive. The mayor comes back and says, you know, there isn't going to be a single town hall union member that is going to switch voluntarily. We can do that, but it's all affordability. The unasked question of the mayor, how much do you want to pay? So it's, you know, you have both sides, and many residents of Wallingford are concerned about affordability.
Right.
Others are more concerned about aspirations.
Right.
You know, the tax bill versus, you know, something else. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, and the mayor has a wonderful way of, well, first of all, he says there isn't one union member. And you know what?
I think that's what he said.
You're right.
Yeah.
I don't
Not
like,
in this clip, but
I
in
don't
the
like to
forum.
speak in those absolutes. I'm not saying there's a lot of union members, but I'm not sure there isn't one union member that wouldn't. Second of all,
It's a campaign rhetorical device.
Right, it is, right. Second of all, it's not like the union, if they are resisting to do it, it's not like they woke up and are trying to screw the town. That's what a union does. It has a contract. The mayor sticks to the contract. The union's going to stick to the contract. So he's kind of painting this into like these bad union people who don't want to do anything, so he can't, he can't move into the modern age. Well, for example, what if you put on the table direct deposit, let's just say? Do you think maybe the union might be willing to trade some things for that?
That has been raised in secret behind closed doors, and I'll never know the answer to it. And because there's a he said, she said,
right.
Thing going on, I don't want to, frankly, interest of time, litigate that. But I get your point.
My point is you got to offer them something.
I get your point.
Maybe if you offered them the internet, or smartphones, or there's ways to get this done. It's just not
no,
as...
there are ways to get
right.
it, and the mayor said there are ways to get it done. The mayor said that.
Right.
It's money.
Yeah.
Now, based on his 30 years' experience, that answer is entitled to some weight. You can do it.
Okay.
It's going to cost you. Don't try to pretend it's not going to cost you.
No, I agree with that.
It's going to cost you.
But
so the balance is, are you willing to put pressure on your tax bill for that convenience? You and Jared Lew say yes, but the tax hawks say no.
Well,
that's the only.
okay.
That's what I'm trying to.
We could litigate. But for example, I might argue that if the mayor, like Vinny Testa, was just stricter in his preparation of the budget,
right.
and for example, maybe used actuals to develop expense budgets, that he might find the money to help pay for something like acknowledging that for the average person, getting to town hall between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, is not an easy thing. So I think there's ways to do it.
Charter revision.
Okay.
Ready to go with charter?
Let's
Because you're
do
opening
something
up
else.
doors.
I know.
It would like take 15 or 20
Yes,
minutes.
you're right.
And Vinny Testa's coming on the show next week.
Good. So let's save it for Vinny.
So,
Yeah, good.
I may have to be the foil for Vinny. I'm not really sure, but he's going to be on, and we can talk about
good,
this.
Good.
Let's talk about charter revision. There was a article in the paper today. Now,
Yes.
we're producing this on Wednesday, November 1, right?
Right.
So on November 1, sorry, it was Tuesday, October 31st.
Okay.
All right. Tuesday, October 31st. Source of, the charter revision controversy. Source of signs saying vote no, a mystery. We talked about this off camera.
Yeah, right,
this
we did.
article.
And I thought about it a little bit after.
Tell me your thoughts
Okay.
about the appearance of vote no signs and save our charter signs put out and paid for by a mysterious person who wants to stay anonymous. Your thoughts?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's good, because after I've been a little harsh on the mayor, I'll give me a chance to be a little harsh on myself. I think my initial reaction to this was that the source, I wasn't as, I think what I said to you was I wasn't concerned about the source as much as Barbara Thompson and some others in the article were, and I was dead wrong on that. We should have transparency in political advertising. I mean, and so the people in that article that were asking the vote no people to at least make themselves known and have some transparency, they were 100% right about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I changed my mind. We wanted to debate that, but
no, I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I would have if you
Right.
stuck to your earlier your guns. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. An anonymity is sort of like, in my view, sort of like a hit and run.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a cheap shot, and there's no accountability if you're spreading bad information because you don't know who the source of the bad information is, and that person can't be challenged. Can't be challenged to a debate, for example, because who is this person? So. I think you're right. I think it's unfortunate that this has all happened this way, but it has, and voters are going to have to make up their own mind about it. One of the areas of discomfort is how I'm going to characterize it, is the fact that all the charter issues are rolled into one question. It's all up or all down. I think it was a source of discomfort for the town councilors when they voted to do it this way. I looked carefully, and some were squirming, and they were kind of on the fence. But I want to get your view of that. Does that mean all of charter revision is dead in your mind because of the way it was presented?
All of charter revision, if you're looking at this constructively and
maturely
and objectively
yeah,
and
sure.
maturely,
That's what we try to do
right,
here. You know.
you should weigh this on the merits of the changes. I think what might have happened in my case, I can only speak to it, and I think in others, is there was some lingering unhappiness about the process and the issues that were taken up, and that's a moot point now. I mean, you should judge these changes, and I should judge them. I'm glad I've talked some sense into myself. I should judge this on the merits of the changes and have an up and down vote. And I think when you do that, it's hard to make a case for what's on this charter revision to vote no. I can make a case for voting no if I carry all the baggage that I have over this into it. But when you just look at the facts of the case, it's hard to make a case to vote no.
Let's make that the final word on that subject.
Okay.
On that subject. But I want to pivot to something else which is, again, difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be talked about.
All right.
And that has to do with a thought I had that was generated by John Sullivan's manner of campaigning and using the fire department and the police department, in my view, as a political prop.
Okay.
And, you know, what that means and should this be encouraged or not, and just all those
Right.
issues. And at the end of my little thing, I'm going to ask you what your thought
Right.
is. But just for some background, there was a political ad in the Record Journal. I think it was October 20. A picture John Sullivan, and he's next to a rescue truck, a fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you know, Sullivan walks the talk, and it's trying to align himself with public safety, and that's combined with a statement he made in the Record Journal, kind of bragging about the ride-arounds that he's had with the fire department and the police department. This happened in 2015, similarly. And on social media, John Sullivan indicated that, you know, he's doing this ride-around, and that qualified him for the job. You know,
Right.
it was a credential. The question. So we have this newspaper ad, we have Facebook posts, and these ride-alongs, by the way, are discretionary with the chiefs.
Right.
Okay, they can pick and choose, and so the issue is, to me, when the police and fire chiefs know or should know that a candidate is going to use this exposure for political gain,
Right.
it will be exploited for political gain. Should that practice continue? Should the practice of ride-alongs continue? Bearing in mind there's a public safety issue, when you have a pedestrian in a police car, they can't turn on the sirens, they can't go on domestic disputes. You know, their hands are limited to some degree. Their options are limited because they have a pedestrian to some degree, and the reason why that pedestrian is there is to get on Facebook and put an ad in the newspaper. I think the policy of the fire chief and the police chief should be no right. Now that we know that this is going on, at least 2 years in a row, 2015 and 2017, now that we know this is going on, the policy is going to be stopped. And I would just add one other thing. A natural and probable side effect of this sort of a ride-along arrangement is a question of whether a political debt has been created. Can John Sullivan maintain his independence when judging public safety issues, whether they're bid waivers,
Right.
Which came up very recently, funding, or other issues, now that he's gotten this favor of a ride-along, because it is a favor.
Right.
That's I think a hard, unpopular comment to make, but I think I've had enough of this. Your thoughts?
Well, you're entitled to have enough.
I know I am.
And this is what we do here. We talk about things. I think that what I would rather see from my counselors
Yep.
is is rather than say I ride along, with any of them, to say I ride along,
Yeah.
I would rather have specific suggestions on how we adjust police and fire services in 2017. One of the things that concerns me, and it may concern John Sullivan too, is as the population gets older, what is the role of our police and fire departments?
Are you pivoting from my comment? I'm not going to let you
Yeah,
pivot. We
right.
talked about pivoting. I'm not
Right,
gonna-
right.
I'm talking about the policy
Right.
of allowing ride-alongs for political personalities,
Right.
knowing or should know they're going to exploit that for votes.
Well,
That's
then,
what I'm getting
right,
at.
right. No,
Should that policy continue?
Right.
Or should it stop? Or do you want to just say no comment? I mean, that's...
I think that in light of what you're bringing up, I think that, the chief should reconsider it.
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's good. Meaning...
I didn't pivot there.
No, you didn't. Meaning he should...
I
This
don't
should not
think,
be allowed
I don't
anymore.
think that Chief Wright wants to have this be an issue. I don't think it's something he needs to have as an issue.
I agree.
Right. With everything else he's got going on in the police department.
I agree.
That I don't think. So I think he should reconsider that, and he probably will.
So, any predictions for the election, or are you going to play it safe?
Am I going to pivot?
No, that's
No.
okay. I'll let you pivot out.
No,
of this
no,
one.
that's okay.
But I invested so much into the last little topic. I want to make sure that you were,
Right, no, that's good. That's good.
either walking the plank
Yes
with
or
me
no.
or
Right,
not,
right.
or cutting the limb off
Right.
after I,
Good
one
point.
or the other.
I'm not in the prediction business.
Okay.
And the most important thing, I think someone said it recently. I don't think it was in the videos, but that the local election is really the most important election
Yeah.
that we have. So, it's one that I always make sure I vote in, even though it doesn't have the, for lack of a better word, the sex appeal of the presidential race.
So some numbers, and we're going
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
close on this. I got the registration numbers from the Registrar of Voters.
Right.
How many Republicans, how many Democrats, how many unaffiliated. Based on their numbers from a few days ago, there's about 27,000 registered voters in Wallingford.
Right.
The unaffiliateds more than equal the Republican and Democratic voters combined, okay? There's 7,445 Democratic voters, 7,445, and Republicans have 5,631. Unaffiliated, 13,684. So the unaffiliated voters, if you want to think of them as swing voters, I don't know. I mean, you could be a national Republican but a local Democrat and vice versa. You could vote. So there. And again, you have up to 9 votes on your ballot.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We appreciate it. We are out of time. We produce these shows on Wednesdays. They are on WPAA on Thursdays at 9. And that's why we say if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. After a day or two, it is up on YouTube. So you can go to the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. It's on YouTube or on WPAA on Friday at 9, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday at 9. Please vote. Thanks for listening. Good night, everybody.